How to play Cleopatra, a quick guide by tangent. Since I'm intending to show this video to my friends as well, I will be including some house rules that I use with my friends. In Cleopatra, each player plays the role of an architect and tries to build the best part of the palace for Queen Cleopatra. Every time a player builds a palace part, the player will gain silver talents. And the player with the most silver talents at the end of the game wins. More on that later. So each player will start with 3 Nile merchants, 5 silver talents, 3 resource cards, or just 3 cards, and 2 Anubis statues. On each turn, players may choose to do one of 2 main actions. One is to go to the market and draw from one of these piles of cards, one of these stacks of cards, or to build something. In order to draw something from the market, you choose one of these stacks to draw all the cards from, and then replenish all 3 stacks. So for instance, let's say it is my turn and I choose to draw from this, the first leftmost stack. And after that is done, all 3 stacks will be replenished, so that the 2 other stacks will gain 1 more card, and the stack that I just drew from will have only 1 card. The resources that are used to build each palace part will be listed in the help sheet. So for instance, in order to build a door frame, players must discard 2 artisans, 1 wood, 1 marble, and 1 lapis. All the resources are the artisan, the wooden log, the marble slab, the stone block, and the lapis lazuli. These are known as the standard or untainted resource cards. There are also tainted resource cards, which will give the player 1 corruption amulet if the player uses them. The tainted resource cards will give the player 2 of each good, so that instead of having to discard 2 wooden log cards, you could just use 1 tainted wooden logs cards at the cost of gaining 1 corruption amulet. The player who is the most corrupt at the end of the game will die and cannot win, even if you have the most silver. The remaining players who are alive will then compare their silver, and the one who has the most silver wins. There is also the trompe-l'oeil card, which could be used as any one of these resources, essentially any resource other than the artisan, at the cost of gaining 1 corruption amulet. This is different from the Nile merchants. The Nile merchants you have at the beginning of the game can be used for any resource, including an artisan. And if you don't use any Nile merchants at the end of the game, you will gain 3 silver talents for each unused Nile merchant. You do not gain any corruption amulets for using them. You just lose the potential 3 talents. However, you are not allowed to donate your Nile merchants. Additionally, besides resource cards, there are also character cards in the deck. You may use character cards anytime during your turn. And the details of what each character does will be detailed in the help sheet. Note that not all of them give you 1 corruption amulet. So for instance, the scribe could give you 2 corruption amulets if you do a certain thing, or 0 corruption amulets if you do another thing. Or stuff like the envoy and the vizier will give you a variable amount of corruption amulets. Every time one category every time all the items in one category has been built, Cleopatra takes 1 step forward, and the game ends when Cleopatra reaches square 5. The items have designated spots on the game board. So for instance, the obelisks must be built here in these spots, the sphinxes must be built in these spots, the door frames must be built on these spots, the pedestal must be built here, and the throne must be built on top of it. The mosaics go in the grid, and the column walls, must fit in one of these 9 slots. You cannot, for instance, build a column wall like this. There are 2 ways to get rid of corruption that you have. The first way to do so is by building mosaics. Every time you build a mosaic, you can try to aim for making a sanctuary. A sanctuary is a closed space where no other mosaic can fit in. The list of mosaics are here. You are allowed to rotate and flip any mosaic to fit to your liking. If you can make a space where no remaining mosaic can fit in, you can place one of your Anubis statues to claim that sanctuary as your own. At the end of the game, each space in your own sanctuary will get rid of 1 corruption amulet from your total corruption. The other way of getting rid of corruption is through the donation, the offerings to the Great Priest. Every time you build something, you earn the silver talents associated with it, plus any bonuses, and you roll the remaining Ankh dice. Every time any dice show an Ankh, you put the Ankh dice that show the Ankh on the altar, and on the next turn when anyone builds something, they roll the remaining dice that do not show an Ankh. Once all 5 dice show Ankhs, an offering occurs where each player donates donates any amount of silver talents that they have. They are not allowed to donate their now merchants here. And simultaneously, after every player has decided on how much they would donate, everyone simultaneously shows how much they have donated. And the donated silver is discarded from the player's silver total. The player who has donated the most gets rid of 3 corruption amulets. The second player, the player who donated the second most, will gain 1, and then the next player would gain 2, and then the player who donated the third most will gain 2, and then gain 3, gain 4, etc. These are the rules for a 3 to 5 player game. There is an official 2-player variant that plays somewhat differently, but this is how the game works for 3 to 5 players. So, my house rules. Usually, when I play Cleopatra, I have Cleopatra start on square 1 instead of square 0 to have a slightly shorter game. And also, players are allowed to discard cards at any time, which originated from a misinterpretation of the rules, but I think it's better this way. And also, players do not get corruption at the end of the game for any tainted cards that they still hold, which they do according to the official rules. I won't explain the reasoning here, but you could read this part if you'd like, and follow this rule if you'd like as well. And that concludes my quick guide of how to play Cleopatra. If there's anything I missed, I would be adding them in the description. Thank you for watching.